Hey guys, wow, the street feels hotter than the August sun should allow. Sirens weave through the air like some strange metallic hymn, and you can smell the acrid sting of tear gas before it even burns your eyes. To your left, the National Guard's camouflage silhouettes are moving in rifles slung low, shields catching the afternoon glare. Somewhere behind them, ICE agents in dark navy jackets weave between storefronts, their radios crackling with clipped commands. You probably won't survive this if you stand still. People aren't running in neat lines. They scatter like startled pigeons, ducking into alleys, slamming apartment doors. Somewhere, a voice yells in Spanish, sharp and panicked. Another shouts back in English, "Keep your hands where I can see them." So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and your local time in the comments. And let's go on the journey of today's story together. You push forward, stepping over an abandoned stroller tipped sideways on the sidewalk. The stuffed giraffe inside still grins, untouched by the chaos. A block away, the flashbang grenades start their percussive chorus short bursts that make your chest thump. You glance at a corner store, its metal gate half pulled down, and through the gap you see a man with his hands high, trembling as two agents pat him down. Later, ICE will say this was a targeted enforcement action linked to multiple outstanding warrants. But the official statement won't mention the woman who fainted when the tear gas rolled into her open window, or the delivery driver who left his van running to help carry her out. Oddly enough, ICE's own website recently celebrated the safe recovery of an ancient Mayan artifact during a completely unrelated investigation, a reminder that in the same week agents raided family homes, they were also praised for protecting cultural heritage. Meanwhile, social media feeds lit up with split-screen clips, one side showing guardsmen in formation, the other a shaky phone video of kids coughing into t-shirts, captioned simply, "This is America, 2025. You're there breathing it in, the dust, the fear, the disbelief, and this is only the beginning." The question circles in your head as you watch the armored vehicles inch down Olympic Boulevard. Why here? Why now? The National Guard didn't just happen to be in Los Angeles, they were called. Officially, the statement from the governor's office said their presence was to ensure public safety after tensions flared in the wake of large-scale ICE raids. But if you trace the timeline, you see the trigger. 3 consecutive mornings of coordinated sweeps across immigrant-heavy neighborhoods, from Boyle Heights to the Fashion District, ending in more than 200 arrests. ICE's press release framed it as a precision strike on criminal elements, yet many detained had no violent criminal history at all, according to track immigration data. You remember the first whispers, 2 days before the Guard rolled in rumors swirling in WhatsApp groups, hushed calls between business owners. "They're hitting the garment shops," one message read. By the second day, local news helicopters were overhead, catching footage of people lined against brick walls, wrists bound in zip ties. It wasn't just arrests, it was the sheer spectacle that rattled the city's spine. From the ice.gov feed, you catch an odd aside. In the middle of reporting on these raids, they also announced a successful sting operation in another state involving counterfeit luxury handbags, a different kind of contraband, a different kind of pursuit, but folded into the same week's ledger of wins. On social media, the commentary burned hotter than the asphalt. The Los Angeles Times posted an aerial shot of National Guard trucks parked beside taco stands and thrift shops. Underneath, a viral comment read, "This isn't public safety, this is theater." Another person replied, "If you lived here, you'd want protection." The argument spiraled, each side armed with its own truths, each sure the other was blind. You walk past a mural of a boy holding a kite, colors faded, but still bright enough to contrast the olive drab of the Guard uniforms. The kite's tail curls toward the street, where it meets the shadow of an armored Humvee. You realize this moment isn't just about enforcement. It's about who gets to decide what protection looks like, and whose fear matters more. Marisol's story reaches you in fragments, passed from one shaken witness to another. You picture her that morning, bent over a sewing machine in a cramped garment district workshop, the hum of the needle drowning out the sounds from the street. She's a single mother, 42, with 2 kids in elementary school and a rent bill that already feels like a luxury tax. The building's windows are always open for air, but that day they became an entry point for something else: the heavy stomp of boots on stairs, the clipped shouts in English, the flash of navy jackets with bold, white ICE letters. When the agents burst in, she didn't think about her purse or her half-finished dress pattern. She thought of her kids. She ducked low, slipped through the back hallway where bolts of fabric leaned like silent witnesses, and pushed into an alley that reeked of last night's trash pickup. But 2 more agents were there, blocking the narrow exit. She turned, sprinted toward the street, and almost collided with a National Guard member. According to ICE's later account, she wasn't a primary target. Her name wasn't on any warrant. They claimed she fled during a lawful investigation and that her detainment was incidental. Yet the track data from similar raids shows a pattern. Roughly 1/3 of those arrested had no prior criminal record, many charged only with civil immigration violations. In a strange twist, buried in that week's ICE.gov updates was a story about agents rescuing a litter of stray puppies from an abandoned home during a separate operation. The comment section turned that into a symbol. Some praised ICE's humor, others mocked the juxtaposition saving puppies while cuffing mothers. A local Spanish-language radio station replayed Marisol's neighbor's voice. She was crying, telling them, "My kids are at school. They don't know where I am." On Instagram, a photo of her workbench scissors still open. A spool of red thread tipped over circulated with the caption, "She didn't finish the dress." You imagine her kids waiting at the after-school program, scanning the doorway for a mother who wouldn't walk through it that night. That image stays with you longer than the sirens. The numbers arrive like cold rain, unfeeling, unblinking. ICE's official tally for the Los Angeles operations: 214 individuals arrested over 3 days, with 127 labeled as having prior criminal convictions. Track Immigration's independent breakdown reveals a quieter truth. Nearly 40% of those detained had no record of violent offenses, many charged only with immigration violations. The age range tells another story: teenagers as young as 18, grandparents in their 70s. Arrest locations span from residential complexes to small businesses, and in at least 7 cases, the detentions occurred near schools. You scroll through the press briefings on ICE.gov. They frame the raids as community safety initiatives, emphasizing the removal of gang affiliates and repeat offenders. Buried between bullet points about Los Angeles arrests, there's a curious inclusion: a note about the seizure of counterfeit driver's licenses in Arizona, unrelated to LA, but presented as part of the same national push. It's the kind of detail that seems to blur the lines between local operations and a broader narrative of enforcement. Local reporters pieced together a timeline from eyewitness accounts and security footage. On the first morning, ICE vans were parked outside a strip mall by 5:30 a.m., engines idling. On the second, agents moved through an apartment block while National Guard personnel secured the perimeter. On the third, the sweep hit the fashion district, where the arrest of Marisol and others played out against the backdrop of rolling racks of dresses and bolts of fabric. Social media lit up with pie charts and heat maps showing the concentration of arrests by zip code. An infographic from an activist group claimed that in certain neighborhoods, 1 in every 50 residents had been detained or questioned that week. Supporters of the raids countered with their own stats, highlighting the proportion of arrestees with prior deportation orders. It becomes clear to you that the facts aren't neutral here. They're ammunition. Depending on the hands they land in, the same number can become proof of justice served or injustice deepened. The figures don't just measure arrests, they measure the fault lines in a city now split between 2 versions of safety. You can almost hear the arguments before they're spoken, because you've seen this divide before. On one side, supporters point to the law-clear statutes that grant ICE authority to detain and remove individuals who are in violation of immigration orders. They talk about the criminal records, the gang affiliations, the court dates skipped. They frame the presence of the National Guard as a stabilizing force, a necessary buffer to prevent riots or violence. If we don't enforce the law, one local radio caller says, then the law means nothing. On the other side, critics see overreach and escalation that blurs the line between policing and militarization. They point to the optics: armored vehicles on streets lined with taco trucks and family-owned mercados. They argue that bringing in the Guard to assist with civil immigration enforcement sends a chilling message, especially to those whose only offense is lacking legal status. The ACLU spokesperson called it a show of force designed to intimidate, not to protect, citing past cases where similar sweeps led to wrongful detentions. In a strange, almost surreal twist, ICE's own weekly newsfeed that month also included a lighthearted story about agents assisting in the recovery of a stolen 1960s jukebox from a warehouse raid, an entirely unrelated operation. On Twitter, activists shared the link alongside photos of crying children outside a detention van, captioned, "They can save the jukebox, but not the family." The ethical tension deepens when you realize both sides are partially right. Yes, there were individuals in those raids with serious criminal charges. And yes, the law was followed to the letter in many arrests. But there were also fathers picked up while dropping kids at school, and mothers like Marisol, whose detention was a byproduct of proximity. You stand in the middle of the street in your mind, hearing both sides shout past each other, the truth suspended in the air like tear gas, visible, heavy, but impossible to hold without it burning you. And you wonder, is bravery enforcing a hard law, no matter the optics, or is bravery refusing to enforce it when the human cost is too high? When the raids ended, the silence wasn't peace. It was the quiet of doors bolted shut, of shop lights that stayed dark even during business hours. Walking through parts of Pico Union or the Fashion District a week later, you could feel it. A nail salon with a closed for family emergency sign in the window. A corner grocery where the bell over the door no longer jingled. Even the street vendors, usually unshakable, were gone. Parents pulled their kids from school, not because of illness or travel, but because they feared an ICE van might park outside. Attendance records at several public schools dropped by double digits overnight, according to the LAUSD reports picked up by local TV. The principal of one elementary said she got phone calls from parents in tears asking if the National Guard was stationed near the playground. Oddly enough, in the middle of this local fallout, ICE.gov posted a press release celebrating the arrest of a fugitive in another state who had been wanted for years on fraud charges. The comment section turned into a proxy battlefield, supporters lauding the capture, critics pasting images of shuttered LA storefronts underneath the post. On Instagram, a short clip went viral. A mariachi band performing outside a detention center, their trumpets and violins battling the metallic rattle of the facility's chain link fence. The caption read, "If they silence us in the streets, we'll play louder." Across TikTok, teens posted empty block videos showing their neighborhoods in slow pans, the absence speaking louder than any protest chant. Community organizations scrambled to fill the void. Church basements became safe spaces for meals and counseling. Volunteer drivers offered rides so families could get groceries without fear. But every act of kindness was shadowed by the knowledge that something fundamental had shifted trust. Once broken, was hard to rebuild. You stand in one of those empty streets, the sound of your footsteps too loud, the air heavy with what's missing. It isn't just about the people taken, it's about the lives put on pause, the routines dismantled, the city learning to hold its breath. Days pass, and the city begins to stitch itself together in small, uneven seams. But you can't shake the images: Marisol's overturned spool of red thread, the mural's kite tail meeting a Humvee's shadow, the mariachi horns ricocheting against steel fencing. You walk past those same streets and think about what bravery really means. Is it the stoic discipline of the Guard member holding his post under a wave of insults? Is it the neighbor who opens her door to hide a stranger, knowing she could be questioned next? Philosophers and politicians have long argued the balance between order and compassion. But here, It's not theory, it's asphalt and sirens. You remember reading on the Marshall Project that in previous mass operations, cooperation between ICE and state forces had been justified as temporary measures to stabilize high-risk zones. Yet, TRAC's longitudinal data shows that these measures often push undocumented residents deeper underground, making them less likely to report crimes or cooperate with investigations. Meanwhile, in a curious post on ICE.gov's media page, agents were photographed hosting a charity car wash to raise funds for a fellow officer's medical bills. The image was almost jarring, smiling faces in jeans and t-shirts, hoses spraying in the sun. The comments below split predictably. Some saw good neighbors, others saw hypocrisy in the midst of the week's detentions. You think about the word breakdown. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's a slow erosion. A breakdown of trust between community and state, a breakdown of the belief that laws are applied with equal weight to all. But there's also bravery in the mother who still walks her child to school despite the rumors, in the activist live streaming the guards' checkpoints, in the teacher who lets her classroom become an after-hours shelter. Standing there, you feel the pull of both words. Maybe the truth is that a city can hold bravery and breakdown in the same breath, one feeding the other, both shaping what comes next. The question is which will leave the deeper mark when the dust settles and the headlines fade. You're still here, the sirens gone now, replaced by the low hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a street dog. The guard trucks have rolled out, ICE vans no longer idle at corners, but the echoes linger in conversations, in the wary glances exchanged between strangers, in the quiet decisions people make about where to go and who to trust. You know that in some homes, families are still missing someone. In others, there's relief that this round passed them by. Scrolling through the week's final ICE.gov updates, you notice a stark pivot. The latest headline boasts a record number of counterfeit electronics seized at a port in Florida. No mention of Los Angeles, no images of the neighborhoods that became backdrops for those tense days. On Facebook, a community organizer shares a photo of an almost empty church hall, the folding chairs still arranged in a circle from last night's meeting. The caption reads, "We talked about fear, but also about next steps." You think about what next steps means for a listener like you. Maybe it's sharing Marisol's story so her kids know the world noticed. Maybe it's digging into the track data and seeing for yourself who was taken and why. Maybe it's just refusing to let the narrative be reduced to statistics or headlines. The debate will rage on. Was it bravery to enforce those raids despite public outcry? Or was it a breakdown of the very principles the city claims to uphold? The answer may never be singular, but you have a choice: to watch passively as these events are archived and forgotten, or to participate in the telling and the reckoning. So you ask the person on the other side of the screen, yes, you to decide. Share this story if it matters to you. Post your thoughts, your anger, your hope. Reach out to someone who lived through it. Because the city is exhaling now, and in that breath is space for action. What fills it is up to all of us. The pace slows, the streetlights flicker on, and the city exhales deeper, longer. The day's heat has faded, leaving behind the faint scent of dust and gasoline. Somewhere a bus sighs to a stop, its doors opening with the gentlest hiss. You walk past storefronts where lights glow soft behind curtains, shadows moving inside ordinary lives reclaiming their rhythm. You think of Marisol's red thread, still looped through her sewing machine, and how it might one day be picked up again. You imagine the mariachi music drifting into the night air, a reminder that joy can persist even in the shadow of armored trucks. The city feels different now, but not broken, more like a scar that has begun to knit, the skin still tender, the memory still sharp. In these moments, bravery isn't loud. It's the neighbor who leaves her porch light on for the first time in a week. It's the father walking his child to school again, holding their hand just a little tighter. It's the community meeting where voices rise not in anger, but in planning. The breakdown is still there too, trust mended slowly, eyes that still dart when an unfamiliar vehicle passes. But with every shared story, every act of solidarity, the balance can shift. So you take one last look at the quiet street, and you promise yourself you won't forget what it looked like when the air was thick with tear gas. and what it feels like now under the soft hum of streetlights. That contrast is the story. That's the reason to keep telling it. And in the telling, maybe we keep the city breathing.